Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, the most important 90 minutes of your day. I'm Michael, the MC and Opportunity Ambassador, and today's show is What Do You Know About Grief and Suffering? But before we get into that topic, let's talk to my co host, Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator.
Thank you very much. I love to be here. This is one of my favorite hours of my day, or 90 minutes.
Deirdre, our development strategist, who's going to be the main topic, or running our main topic today.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you're all here. Nice seeing you all again.
Tim, our expert executive analyst.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you.
And Dennis, our freedom facilitator.
Blessed Lord, we're glad to be with you. Thank you for your time, for sharing it with us.
Now, Willow might jump in here shortly, but with that said, let's just hustle right into our topic. Deirdre, where do we want to start?
Sure. Did you want to bring up the first image for me, Agnieszka?
Just give me a moment here. Jeez. I don't know which
That's okay.
one's the first one.
I told you. I sent it to you.
In order?
And I named it.
All right.
I named it. Let's go with that. I'll see. I'm on Periscope.
It's the little girl image. I just showed them.
Okay, good. All right. So we've got loss. So we're talking about grief, loss, and suffering today on the show. And so the image that we have up is the child with the balloon that drifts away. This is the first time that I experienced loss. I acknowledged it as some type of loss that I can remember. That feeling that, I let my balloon go, but then I turned to my mum and it kept floating away. And she said, oh, well, it's not coming back. And she didn't get me another one. And I had to experience that my balloon had gone. I was really young, probably 4, 5. So I didn't know that, balloons, getting another balloon is, it's okay. To me, that was forever thing. That was my balloon. It was off doing its own thing, wandering around. But I just remember hitting me with great sadness. That was my balloon. So that's why I have that image on there too. I felt like that was a really simplistic way to represent loss. And then I kind of it took me a bit to get to kind of grasp loss for a while there, especially when I was learning about it. And for me, I like to say loss or lost. So it's a lost person, a lost experience, or a lost possession. To me, that defines loss clearer for me. But that's just my opinion. So
what's the difference? What's the difference between the word loss and lost in your mind?
Lost. Oh, I had this written down. Oh no, I have it written down. I'm so glad you asked that. So loss is the verb, or meaning to lost. Lost is the verb, meaning to lose something. I lost at a tournament. That is lost. Whereas loss is a noun. That is I had an example in my head, but it's gone now. So loss is defined as having something or someone leave or be taken away from you. It is followed by a feeling of grief when something is gone. The more meaningful the loss, the more intense the grief is likely to be. So I'm going to move on now to the next thing that experience. As soon as you get that sudden realization of loss, it's a sudden thing. Suffering comes next. So I'll put the suffering image up, please. Now, I made this one more intense because I felt like it needed to evolve more than...
Hang on, I have the suffering right up because there was a little quote. And I thought it was so cool when there was a little quote and then the image shows after. So I have the quote on. And so I'm just going to read it to you guys, whoever's just listening. Pain from problems and disappointments, etc., is inevitable in life. But suffering is a choice. determined by whether you choose to compare your experience and pain to something better and therefore feel unlucky and bitter, or to something worse and therefore feel lucky and grateful. And here is the suffering image. Ooh, that's crazy.
It is crazy.
It's
I
very
don't know,
intense. It's
it
very
is intense. Have you ever, I know that I've lost something before, like keys. What if somebody lost their job? Is that the intense emotion, the suddenness of, oh, we're letting you go now? That's what it kind of, to me, that's what it kind of feels like inside, that just raw intensity of it's gone.
Sometimes things that are taken away that we're not even all that attached to cause that feeling of loss, and because I guess we want it to be our choice. I choose to let this thing go, but when the thing is gone without my agreement or assent, it's like, even if I didn't like it, it's like, whoa, why did it go away? Why did my least favorite mug get broken?
Mm-hmm. That's right. It's the suddenness that it wasn't your choice.
What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I feel that you can only really lose what you had in the first place, right? And then what really do you have in terms of having in terms of possessing? Is like, what is it that you possess? Is it really something that you have like forever, or is it something that was just given to you for a certain amount of time? Because if it's the latter, then anyway, it was just if you become aware of that whatever thing it is, even if it's your body or your life, that's just given to you, for a certain amount of time. You don't even know for how long. Or the mug, so you have a mug, but it's not going to be there forever. So it's if you're aware of the fact that it's not something that's going to last, then the loss comes with the getting it. So in the moment you get, if you're aware of it, then you know that sooner or later it's going to be gone, and we don't even know how long we're going to have the mug or life or whatever it is. So to be aware that almost everything is not constant and forever, so the loss kind of comes along with it. So it's I feel that it's kind of part of that. And then the interesting thing is to discover what is there that cannot be lost.
Yeah, that's right.
But that whole permanence thing is very strange too, because sometimes you're looking. I remember this one thing. I don't know why this sticks out in my mind, but there was this specific probiotic cheese, and I thought, if forever, till the end of my life, if I eat this cheese every day, everything will be good, and I have to eat it forever because it really regulates my digestion, whatever. And so this was like a forever thing. And then like a year later, I was no longer eating that cheese, not even thinking about it. And it was no longer forever. So that's the thing with objects too. Like, oh, this is my favorite mug, I'm going to carry it forever. Next thing you know, it's at the back of the cupboard because you got a new favorite mug,
Is it because you're this feeling that you were describing, that you're kind of overwhelmed, or it's not overwhelmed, but let me try to find a better word. The child that gets the balloon is like, wow, the balloon is everything. When you get in the cheese, that's it, and that's everything, and you're so entangled in that joy, in that feeling of the moment, that you forget about that it's something that will fade away eventually. So but if you really think about it, okay, I get the balloon, and but it's gonna be gone maybe tomorrow, maybe in a week, maybe in 5 minutes, so let it go. And but you're so overwhelmed. It's not to judge it, because it's part of it, to feel that enjoyment and to feel that you're that, and to be in that moment. But I think if you completely identify with that feeling, then the loss is going to come, it's going to lick your heart. It's going to be like it's going to be a shock, because it's going to tear you out of that la la land, of the overwhelming feeling that you identify with in that moment. So if we're able to retain, a little space somewhere where you can enjoy you can enjoy the balloon, but you can know that it's just a balloon still. It's just a balloon, but let me enjoy it, because enjoyment is there, but it's still a balloon. So if it's gone, you can feel the loss and you can feel the grief and you're going to suffer as well, maybe. But still, there's this little part of you that knew before that, that's a possibility, or that's actually a certainty.
All right. What is suffering? I pulled this one from the dictionary. To suffer is to submit or to be forced to endure an inevitable, unpredictable, uncontrollable, or unavoidable events and tragedies of life. So that could be just simply, I set a goal and I didn't get to where I wanted to be. I invented something and it didn't work out. You have to go through that grieving process of, oh my gosh, I'm an idiot. I didn't screw on the screw properly. That's all that's all suffering. That's going through the grief of it and then having to go, oh my gosh, now I need to rewrite it all. It's not so much, it could be to the extent of having somebody pass away. It could be the extent of having a parent disappear out of your life. But it even just not having your goals met, it's suffering through that. So that's the dictionary definition. Our world is not fully a place of bliss and perfection, something we can simply sit back on and enjoy. We are confronted with wants, pains, and suffering, with disease and death, crime and violence, war, failures, and guilt. And existentialists believe that suffering is I can't even pronounce that right now. Is a part of life. And like reality, the reality of evil presents itself to us as something we have to examine and deal with. Suffering and trouble belong to life as much as fate and death. None can be subtracted without destroying its meaning. We are all mortal. Even if we lived in a bubble of happiness, never experiencing any disappointment, you would still experience death and having to experience the suffering of, was this a life well lived? Therefore, therefore in life we suffer pain. Life questions us to make what we make of it, what we do with it. It will neither fit into our plans nor unfold according to our dreams. Life cannot be made to bend at the knee to our ideals or ideas of it. It refuses to be fully explained, controlled, and manipulated, even with the rigor of science. So I have a quote from Rollo May. He says,
all right there, Missy, it's not a reading show. Are you going to be reading for the next half an hour? Jesus.
I got one more quote and then I was going to ask questions.
I'm like, how much longer is she going to read? We're suffering.
You're suffering.
Everybody else is suffering too. I'm speaking for our listeners.
Okay, well, for no matter how interesting or theoretically true is the fact that I am composed of such and such chemicals, or I act by such and such mechanisms or patterns, the crucial question always isn't that it always happens to be that I exist in this given moment in space and time. And my problem is how I am to be aware of that fact and what I shall do about it. Rollo May, what do you think about that? How am I aware that I exist and what shall I do about it? Suffering. All right,
we haven't heard from Tim at all yet on the first question, so I'd like to hear from Tim first. Oh, you're muted, Tim.
Go, Tim.
And what was the first question again?
That was so long ago. It was about loss. We were talking about loss, but you can comment on the grief as well, whatever you like.
No, I think that, we kind of strive for attachment and we strive to permanence. And when we have a loss, especially if it's somebody or something that we really care about, we're kind of reminded of the impermanence of life and our own mortality and the impermanence of all attachments and relationships. And it can be disturbing. It can be a reality check. And I think, it affects children more probably than adults, because we kind of collect losses and experiences as we go through life. And then we become aware of our own mortality. And as long as we don't deny that, then we can more readily accept the things that happen to us without being devastated.
I was going to say something about, we talked about the art of communication at some point back in the past there. And one of the statements was, I know you suffer. And I think we all suffer. And to some degree, a lot of the times we don't even really, we really aren't cognizant of the suffering that we are putting ourselves in under. And, I was actually just listening to another book today by Robert A. Russell, and they were talking about forgiveness. And, the forgiveness isn't about forgiving, like giving somebody else forgiveness, but it's about really actually healing yourself. And like the fact that we don't see that as important means that we're essentially suffering with all these things that we can't forgive other people of, but it really is something in ourself. It's that we can't heal, and so
So
I think
what you're
that's a
saying, what you're saying is that the suffering, grief and loss has to do not so much with the object of our desire that has now been taken away from us or the situation of our desire, but more an inner battle of how we react to that situation.
I would say so, yeah.
So it's all an inner battle.
So, Mike, you were saying with the forgiveness, so it's not the forgiveness of what has been done, it's more that the forgiveness that it can't be changed.
That, as well as just like whatever the pain that we're suffering, we let that go, and to a large part, when other people hurt us, we just let that pain just keep, it's like an open wound that we just never really let go of. And so I think that's definitely a suffering that I think all of us deal with,
Mm.
you know, and certainly, it is reflected in a lot of people that are triggered and stuff. It's because those, that word or that emotion gets triggered, and then they feel that pain, and then boom, they're off to the races.
Yeah, it's tragic to be, and people live their lives like that, not instant moment, not like, oh, okay, I'm just going to grieve over, oh, I did this big project and it just fell through. Okay, now I've just got to just sit for a couple months and just get back on my feet. No, people live like that their whole life.
But it's insidious. It sucks you in. I remember when I was working at IBM and we got laid off 2 or 3 months before the end of our term. So we ended up having, and the whole department was let go to move to India. So there were like 20 or 30 people that were all being let go, maybe 20, all being let go, and all had to work together for 3 months knowing that the job was going nowhere. It was the most demoralizing thing ever. And the grief and suffering it started the day I found out, went through the whole process, but then it lasted for another 6 months because I kept thinking, like, I was really attached to, I really liked that job. I really liked the people. I really liked the advancement opportunities and all that I was experiencing. And I was like, oh no, all of that is now taken away from me, right? I'll just be sad for a day. And then every day I would choose to be just sad for a day. And then eventually it was like a way of life. And 6 months had passed and I was like, okay, like seriously, that was so long ago. I don't even work there anymore. I have to like get out of this feeling.
Yeah, that was your grief. That was your grieving process, because grief is an emotion. It is unique to you. And depending on the meaning of the loss, depends on how much you need to grieve. Yeah, Tom.
Can I have my peanut butter sandwich?
Okay, I'm going to be back, guys. I'm going to peanut butter sandwich. Talk amongst yourself.
It reminds me of something that comes to my mind often, especially like lately, which is to be really grateful for what we have been given, and for small things as well, and that's, in a way, it maybe doesn't prevent suffering, but that feeling of gratefulness, like even for little things, and for the fact, that I have 2 hands and 2 feet, and that I'm healthy, and that there's food in the fridge, and family's there, and those kind of things. Is like, wow, it came more to my awareness when those things were much more how would you say, in danger, or like where it was questionable, if that was going to be there tomorrow, and if that, where perceived safety and security was more like was not so obvious, or was not there, or wasn't
And
in question.
if our listeners want to hear that story, that's the Dennis face reading part 1 and 2 about when he was in danger and may not have survived the next 5 minutes. Go on.
And when Michael, when you were talking a while ago, something came to my mind that I came across years ago. It's called Ho'oponopono. I'm not sure, have any of you heard about that before?
I
From
have.
Hawaii, that
Yeah.
system. And something stuck with me for years, and it's even still there, which is those 4, I'm not sure if you call it phrases or a saying, which is I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And those things that kind of burn themselves like into my memory, like I practice it, like, walking up steps and doing, mundane things. And that was just like a mantra, like in my mind, and still comes up sometimes. And so when you were talking, that came straight back to my mind. And it's really amazing how that kind of the gratefulness and the fact that you become aware of the things that we have, or that we perceive that we have, they're really just there temporarily. So they're just like lent to us for a certain time. So they're given to us to take care of them, whether it's a house or a child or even our physical body. And then it's within our responsibility to take care of it. And then we do whatever we can do to take care of it, and maybe to make what we can out of it. But then also there's a moment of letting it go again.
Doesn't it make it feel more cherishable, more meaningful, knowing that?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
It does. Okay, grief. Can you bring up the grief image, please?
Yes, but I still haven't heard from Tim yet. He keeps skipping every round of talk. I don't know. Are you trying to be like smooth under the radar? Because just so you know, Tim, you haven't been around for a week or so. Now all 5 images are portrayed to our listeners all at once.
Oh, I understand. I'm just listening. I'm not over here picking my nose or anything like that, right? So
I know.
But we all can see
He was
right
just
behind
trying
Tim what he was doing
finish
for
a
the last
report
week.
or something. Yeah.
the beautiful painting that Tim painted himself behind his head.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think Dennis is right on with the cherishing the things that you have and being grateful for the small things in your life, because they could all disappear in a moment's notice. So being aware of that, or when you're in a difficult situation, when things are going well, or at least status quo, you don't take the time to recognize the good things that you have. It's only when they're gone that you recognize that. So be helpful to be grateful, or have some type of a ceremony or a meditation on gratefulness on a daily basis. Just makes you feel better.
There's an exercise that comes to my mind. Exercise, I'm not even sure. Like a kind of awareness thing, which is to enjoy every moment as if it was the first time you step outside your house, as if it was the first time you see the leaves of the tree, or you feel the breeze in your face and your hair, or the first time you open the book and you looked at that, and it's like that kind of amazement. You can see it in little children often still. It's like, wow, like we oftentimes will lose that, because we've done it, we've seen it many times, and then we kind of, our senses kind of seem to dull down over time as well, and we overload our senses as well with many things. So to kind of rediscover and to be able to see the beauty and just creation around us, that's something that's not many people seem to be doing today. It's easy to point out what's going wrong and what's painful and what's hurting, because we are being shown that 24/7 all around the clock already. But it's something else to be able to recognize that as well, and to see it as well, but to also point out the beauty and the harmony that is there.
But what's weird? So the happiness quotient is much higher in people who are poor, living in some kind of godforsaken village, than it is in rich people who live in mansions and have everything. Isn't that strange that these rich people would have everything and they would still be unhappy?
It's called Happy Planet Index. Have you heard about
Basically,
it?
why we're in the situation we're in these days.
Existential vacuum. It's a global level of meaninglessness. There is so much meaninglessness getting around. They have everything that they want, yet they lack meaning in life. Whereas you say the poorer countries, they have meaning. Yeah, they have meaning because it's meaningful to go and grow their own veggies. They have meaning in that because they need to have meaning in that. Otherwise, they'll go hungry.
I think it's because they don't have Microsoft Excel. That's why they're so happy.
Absolutely.
Actually, they probably do. I think Microsoft Excel makes sure that it's in every godforsaken village.
Grief image.
Grief image, yes.
So,
all right.
I mean, it's so much easier to be grateful and be happy when
There
you're
you guys
outside
go. I
and
don't
seeing
know.
things.
Our audience is thrilled with the grief image.
Oh, great.
But seriously, have you guys heard about the Happy Planet Index? I thought that was really interesting. It's a research that has been done over several years now, and I think there's a website where you can look it up. And funny enough, it wasn't only like poor countries that would rate very highly, but it was especially islands as well. So you had Jamaica actually was quite up on the list. But Costa Rica is on the island, but it was very high as well. And some smaller islands, they rated far higher than first world countries, so-called developed countries. And what they measured with the Happy Planet Index, it was a quotient between the environmental impact of individuals, then the perceived happiness, and wealth as well. So they would measure those three factors, count them together, and then come up with a scale. And that was super interesting. And I guess people can check it out if they're interested in that. But I found that was really enlightening to see how some of the rich countries were kind of like in the middle field, while some of the countries that are rather economically poor were like ranking far up because they had like people were happier, and oftentimes they would not have the bad environmental impact that some of the so-called developed nations would have.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
Maybe they don't have the news there.
So the image that you had of the grief,
I'm going to
could
put
you
it back.
explain a little bit why you
There's
chose
the
that?
grief image.
Okay, so the image of grief. So to me, this was showing the emotion of grief. Grief is, I'll just have my little spill, if everyone's okay with that. Grief is grief is all encompassing. Everything is affected by grief, physically, emotionally, socially, mentally, spiritually, and is a response, an emotional response to loss. It doesn't have to just stem from a death of a loved one, but also divorce, abuse, abandonment, and much, much more, causing angst and anxiety about life. Growing through loss is a part of the process of life. Finding meaning in the suffering of life is not closer, it's not closer, but coping with grief is. And so that's why I picked that image. It's just, there's this person there and they are in their own bubble. They are engrossed with grief, and the world outside of them is just dark and black. It is, it just, to me, just was the perfect image of grief. Somebody going through grief. Like, we can all see that. It may not look bad to me, but it meant something more to that other person. And that's why grief is, depending on what the loss was and the meaning of the loss, depends on the level of the grief. So it's signs of deep sorrow. Grief is a normal body reaction to loss. It is an attack on the body to slow down and has real effects on the emotions of the body and the mind. Feelings of stuck, lost, and unsure will come up. Grief is a feeling experienced after the realization of the loss. What do you guys think of the image?
I think it speaks well to the thing. Honestly, I was just watching somebody on the beach basically being thrown off the beach by the police, And it was just like a bunch of people. It looked like a normal day at the beach. There was people surfing and stuff like that. But then here come the police, and they're telling them, get off, get off, or we're going to arrest you, kind of thing. And I could just see on the people's face, like, they've lost something, and they just can't believe that it's like it is. But I think this is kind of one of the things that I think society is dealing with is they don't realize that this is kind of like the next wave is like this grief wave where they realize, holy shit, we've lost a bunch of stuff and we're not getting it back.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That I was going to go up. Well, you can go bigger and more global with that, but thank you, Mike. You introduced that. There are, you can go larger with that. The realization of loss of freedom. Yeah. So I've got just a couple more things to add about grief. Grief holds an array of emotions like sadness, shock, anger, guilt. Mentally, there's disbelief, preoccupation, like they're not mentally in the mind, confusion, and physical effects of like dryness of mouth, hollowness, emptiness, not breathing properly, loss of appetite, sleepiness or sleeplessness. So you can get excessive amounts of sleep or no sleep, and absent-mindedness and out of their normal behavior. So if that makes it clear. So it's they're not acting how they usually act. That's a sign of grief. And then grief also triggers deep questioning, like questioning of like the meaning of life, questioning about mortality, questioning of feelings of anger and resentment for having something done to you, the guiltness, feeling guilt for all of that as well, and just feeling guilty for not being able to handle your emotions, which is not true. The way that you go through grief is entirely unique to you, and that should be accepted. Not like if somebody's getting angry, more just like, gee, you've taken 6 months on this, come on. Well, maybe they really need it. Just hang in there, be there for them. Don't let them dip into depression.
How do you not let somebody dip into depression?
Well, like you said, you had signs of moving forward. You decided, okay, today I'm just not going to cry. I'm just going to hold myself together and just not cry. I can cry my eyes out and eat some chocolate cake tomorrow.
Yeah, but you said stop somebody else from feeling that way, not stop yourself from feeling that way.
Well, no, I was meaning the signs. So you're showing signs of progress. When someone spirals into depression, I say spirals because it's okay to kind of go in and touch your dark places. But when it's spiraling into depression, that dark, ominous place where you can't get out of bed, where it's just like, oh, why bother? That's a sign of depression. That's when they need love. Even if they don't feel there anymore, they need love.
That's an interesting thing, because like with the social distancing and stuff, essentially we're being restricted from, like giving each other love, giving each other hugs, like really getting close to other people. I'm imagining that that's probably going to accelerate, the population's downward spiral into much worse grief and potentially depression because of this whole situation.
So if we were together, who would be okay with hugs? Okay, I just wanted to check. So it's still possible that it can happen.
Listeners, let us know if you'd be okay with hugs in the comments.
I mean, if two people agree, then it's still possible that it can happen.
You all have your lead suits, right?
Mine's in the wash. Sorry.
Got to wear a plastic bag over your head, but you can.
So there's a lot of fear out there right now. There's a lot, and it's causing people families to stay away from each other, and it's really sad.
Yeah.
Snippets is a terrible thing still.
It is sad. So what do you do about it when you have a shocking situation and then you get overcome by the suffering of it all and having to endure contactless society? How would you deal with that? How would you cope in other means to get that contact?
I wouldn't participate in contactless society. I would
You
create
mentioned
my
something.
own subsystem of the society that would be contact full.
I think people are taking Deirdre's first suggestion, which was chocolate cake. There's a lot of that going on.
Heather says she would give us hugs too if she
Okay,
was
good.
in the same physical presence. So
Judging by the putting on the COVID-19 that I'm witnessing, I can see there's a lot of chocolate cake involved.
I'm going to the supermarket not wearing the muzzle and enjoying people staring at me and probably opening their mouth, but nothing too much came out so far. Although a few people said that, yeah, today we went to a photography shop because we needed passport size pictures for my daughter, and I was there like last week, and I walked in just like that, and the lady was like this, but we had a really nice conversation afterwards, and she was actually quite aware. She was like, oh, it's like 0.028% mortality, and like it's the sniffles last year were like worse than that. Like 2 years ago, it was 25,000 deaths in Germany alone with the flu, and then so she was aware of all of that. And then still, when I came back today, she was like, when after I had paid and I was walking out after being there like for 20 minutes taking pictures and stuff with the children, and she was like, and I'm supposed to, I suppose it doesn't make sense for you anyway, but I still should tell you that I have to make you aware that you were supposed to wear a mask in this store. I said, yeah, I don't think it doesn't make sense at this point. So, but it was funny still. But yeah, so adding to what or answering Deirdre's question, maybe and adding to what Michael was saying earlier, maybe that entire situation also, by depriving us of those things that have become mundane or normal for us, being able to hug and to be close to each other, maybe depriving us from that is actually is life asking us to appreciate and to do it with much more awareness. Because after weeks and months of not having that, it's like it's going to be a whole new things of being able to hug your grandma or whoever you weren't allowed to see for so long, or walk through the supermarket without a muzzle on. So that's going to be and maybe that's like what I was trying to describe earlier with this exercise of wow, stepping outside and just there's sun and there's the wind and stuff, being able to appreciate those things. So if you see it from a perspective of it's not Bill, the gatekeeper, and all those other people, trying to, do whatever they want to do with mankind. But if it's life, actually, if it's life putting this situation up for us, it's like, it's not anything personal, but it's okay. Life tells us we have to stay home, we have to do this and that. Why would life put us in that situation right now? What is the message? What is, what is the lesson behind that? So, that would be my way of dealing with it. So sometimes I sit down and I don't try to take it in too personally, because you can spiral down pretty easily from there. But to say, okay, what's life asking from me right now? How am I supposed to posture with it? Am I supposed to get angry, which is sometimes necessary and not wrong either, but without judging what on that scale of possibilities that is given to us, how are we supposed to posture, how are we supposed to react to that situation that we are facing right now. And I feel that should be that should be an individual decision, right? So that's the point, that all of us can make an individual free decision how to posture, and it shouldn't be something that somebody else or a tiny group of people is going to tell us how everybody will have to posture. But that's our very individual freedom and right to do.
That's exactly
to
right.
posture how we want.
Yeah, Dennis was right on that. Just what's the meaning of this? And kind of taking that away and going, well, making it more meaningful to connect when it's gone. That's what you said was just beautiful. It was like poetry listening to you then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have one more slide? I think it was from Viktor Frankl. I think my one more slide was from Viktor Frankl.
Oh no, it's just the quote I read earlier. That was your last slide.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'm all done. All right.
This
I wasn't
one.
too sure. I couldn't remember.
This one, you guys. To everybody who's watching, this is what she's talking about. Viktor Frankl. All right, I'm back to us.
Where was I going with this? A great book that I read that really helped a lot is called I think Prisoners of Thought. Yeah, I think that's what it's called, maybe. And it goes in line with if somebody was in prison, how do they kind of, or in some type of institution, how do they kind of escape that? They're bound to that, but they can still be who they are. And
What is this?
that's the show, darling.
You're on the internet.
You wave. So how do we, taking responsibility of your own grief, because once what has been taken from you has been taken, what you're experiencing is now your responsibility. You can do it in 4 steps. There's the accept, you have to move, accept that the loss has happened and it's real, and now the burden is on us. 2, work through the feelings of the pain, accept, feel the pain, the hurt, the anger, the depression, the loneliness. They're all just side effects of grief. Just feeling them, acknowledging that, yeah, I feel really sad right now. Like, I feel so sad. Feeling that at a deep level kind of let your body know that you are working through it. Where was I? It's just clicking. Okay. And there's actually 2, it depends. There could be 2 types of loss as well. So there's the initial grief, which is that there's from the primary loss, which is from the first event. And then something that could possibly happen is losing friends because you were just such an angry person to be around, or you were just so sad and melancholy that you lost friends because you weren't dealing with your grief very well. That is called a secondary loss. That can also happen as well. So step 2 was working through the feelings of grief. Step 3, adjust to a world without what has been lost. Find other ways to regain what was lost. Find a new way, find new trustworthy social interactions as well. So that means putting that lost thing as, okay, it is now lost. It is now a memory. It is now gone. It has happened. It is written in the sands of time, and there's nothing that can be done about that. And that is now placed in a different place for you now. It's no longer as a now thing. Okay, yeah, and that's step 4. Emotionally place the loss with a new place. Okay, for you to move forward in your life. Okay, yes, that's 4. Acceptance, work through feelings, adjust to your new worldview, and place the loss as something that was, but not is.
What are some of your first responses like to that, the stages that you just described? Like I can see myself, like right down on a physical level, if I'm somehow shaken up, like, I would go downstairs and hit the park for a while, or go in nature and just be by myself, like surrounded in the woods or somewhere. Or music is a huge thing for me as well. So I can, use different types of music of, picking me up where I am in my emotional stage, and then, or turning it up or turning it down in terms of the level where the music will take me. But those would be some of my first, down to earth things, on my list to do if I feel that I'm somehow unbalanced. Do you have any strategies on hand? Do you have a list of things that you do when you experience those emotions?
Myself, I remember other time. Like I'm like, okay, when is the last time you felt that way? Did it last forever? No. Okay, then this probably won't last forever either. You know what I mean? When is the last time this happened or that happened? Or how did you deal with it? What were the tools that worked last time?
So stepping back and getting some perspective on those things, that maybe going outside and seeing how big the world is, and then maybe like realizing your place in the world and how small you are compared to everything else that's going on, or how big the universe is, right? Getting your place set in both time and space can give you some perspective on these things.
Michael?
Oh, those are.
Well,
What do you think?
I've had some points in my life where I really it was extremely difficult to move beyond that moment, where you're lost and you're so surrounded by the difficulty, you can't seem to break your mind out of it. It is one in which I think to some degree you do need help. I can recall calling my father on a couple different occasions and having a discussion with him, and uh, you know being able to actually listen to him was really an important part of me moving beyond where I was at. But I do feel like it is something that it does require somebody else, in a lot of cases, to help, because sometimes you just can't get outside of where you're at.
That's right. Thank you for mentioning that, Mike. Yeah, grief isn't meant to be suffered alone. It's not meant to be endured alone. It's meant to be, you're already enduring it. Whereas if you have like a safe person, a friend or a family member, just that you can talk about these deep feelings with, these deep questions of life, it gets it out of your mind and it stops the rumination of why me.
Mike, what
That
about the
also.
journaling? Does that help you out?
Certainly, that would be probably plan B if you couldn't find somebody. Definitely, journaling would be the second go around.
Mm.
You see, not too long ago, my sister passed on, and I was, I was able to see, to see myself or see a part of myself going into that stage on grief and what you go through if you have a loss like that. But at the same time, there was a part in me that was like, that was not involved in that, and that was really an amazing experience, which I had heard before or read about before, but it was not something experiential. But to be able to observe myself and let the emotions do their thing, but to also have that, how would you say, understanding, or the knowing that there's something that has not changed, that there's something that's not affected by it, and that what that really and truly there is no loss, but the loss is perceived, and I accept that, and I accept the reaction, and I have the tears running down and the thoughts, and that feeling of loss is there on a way. But then also, like on a whole different level, there's a connection there, and there's things there that are beyond just the loss of the physical body. So there's something that is way beyond that, and that has been really like a difficult time on one level, but on the other time, it is something that invited me to look at things even more keenly, so to say, from that other perspective, which is possible, and which showed me that is a possibility that we have. So it becomes a choice only if we are aware of that possibility, and I think that's something that we can bring to people, and that's probably something helpful to to help people to see that there actually is a possibility, and there's a choice that we can make, um, which is still to accept the pain that we feel, and to go through all the stages of grief and of suffering, but to also see that there's a possibility of when it's threatening to overcome us or to overwhelm us. Then of course the other strategies are there, whatever, friends, music, journaling, all those physical things are all, I feel, valid strategies as well. But also even if those were not there, there's a part within us that we don't have to do anything, we don't have to go anywhere, we don't have to talk to anybody, but there is this possibility that we can find within ourselves to, how would you say, deal with it. I'm not even sure if that is the best word, but there's a part within ourselves that is not that cannot be overwhelmed by it, and that knows that there's a higher knowing, an inner knowing, that the loss it's not affected by any loss.
It's that self-transcendence. That's what I refer it to, going beyond yourself.
And maybe it's an invitation then to discover that, to unveil that, so it's like, and sometimes I read that's what happens to people, that in the hour of the biggest loss, the thing that they most held on to, that was the most important thing in their life, once they lost that, then it's a kind of death as well, right? Because it's like your idea, your perspective of life, your whole thing is like everything, the card house kind of collapses and falls together. It's like, it seems like everything is just destroyed and gone, but still you see it destroyed right in front of your eyes, but you're still there. So something is still there. And then it's maybe an invitation to go into that and to discover and to actually see, what is that thing that is still there? What is that thing that has not collapsed, that is actually not collapsible?
Yes. Growing beyond yourself. Yes.
So it's interesting. Heather wrote this big paragraph for us, and it's very interesting. She says that grief is something that becomes another part of us when we learn to live with it. Like, it's incorporated into our being. It may not be as raw as time goes on, and there is semblance of healing that does happen, and it doesn't rule you, rather sits inside you for whenever it's necessary to be gone through again in new cycles. So yes. I think that's very interesting, but I wouldn't say that applies to my grief, like from IBM or whatever. That was not deep enough to leave a lasting, like, it was deep at the time, but it's not something that sits with me. But for example, my companion parrot, whom I lived with for 20 years, who died a year ago, that is something that'll always be like a hole in my heart. You know what I mean? Like, I'm okay. I'm not crying. I'm not freaking out. But she was my family member, and she was there for 20 years every day beside me. And then now she's been gone for a year. So I don't know if that'll ever go away.
No. Well, would you want to? Because then you have to not remember her. And I'm sure remembering her and all the fun times, all the little cherished memories that you have, joy, but also sadness at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you feel like that, Dennis, about your sister? Not to compare your sister to.
Yeah, one of the huge things for me was that I felt really invited and compelled to look even more beyond just the physicality of our beingness, and to connect even more, on that other level, which is there from my experience, and that then is something beautiful, which in a way maybe I wasn't able to do, to have that kind of connection, or to be aware, or to deepen that kind of connection when she was physically beside me. So that is like, that's in a way funny in itself. So sometimes you have to lose something in order to appreciate it, and then in that appreciation, maybe there's a different, a new way of actually regaining it, or regain it even on a different level, on a higher level than before. So now, and I feel like that of other, with other family members, that would have transitioned and passed on. I don't, like, it's an experiential thing for me. It's like, obviously, like, I cannot physically grasp them, like, but there's a place, that we can go, that we can connect to them, and then it doesn't feel like it's far away or it's distant, but I can remember, I can feel moments, it's like as if it was, yesterday, and I can connect with them on that energetic level, if you want to use that words, and that is something really powerful.
Isn't that the beauty of a memory? You remember. That's beautiful.
And in that way, it is it is part of who I am right now too, right? Because it was part of my experience. So it's part of the moments that culminate in that present moment of my life as well. So from that viewpoint, it is not something that is gone, because it is, for me, it is here right now. It's like, all those moments of experiences that made me who I am right now, they are still living through that and living on in that on that level as well.
Heather says, grief is the price we pay for love. And she also clarified that the grief she was referring to earlier was the grief of her firstborn daughter, or first daughter. She said first daughter. So that's a deep, deep grief.
Yeah. That, and you compared the comparison, like you said, I don't grieve over, I don't feel that for my old job anymore. But I do feel that for my lovely bird, who was like a daughter to me, like an actual child, like a sister. So therefore, the meaningfulness of what was lost, the meaningfulness of the loss is still there. It's still meaningful.
So with these jobs, it's it's primarily the relationships that we miss, right? Because we know we're not going to see those people anymore. And yeah, we might feel kind of bad about the loss of income or trying to go find something else to do. But just knowing that you're not going to be as connected to the people that you care about in that way, that's creates some grief for sure.
It was supposed to be my future.
Well, that too.
I don't think I would fit into that corporate environment. The older I get, the more subversive I become, the less appropriate I am for a corporate thing. So it's all good.
I still think about the quotes about love, and I feel I can agree to it, but then I also feel it depends how you define love. Because if you see everything, Bill the gatekeeper, the cops at the beach, the baby, my sister, every little thing that is there that we can perceive, if you see that as love, if that is how you define love, then this is something all encompassing. Even hate, then what some people say is the contrary of love, even that is part of love as well, if you talk about love from that perspective, because it is part of the duality happens in that love then. And then this would be something all encompassing, so to say. And then
isn't that interesting? That I don't remember where I read this. I think it was maybe it's off Ender's Game or something, or some type of maybe the Art of War. It is to know my enemy, I must first love him.
I was listening to the Art of War the other day. I have it on Audible, and I actually ended up listening to it 2 or 3 times because it was the way he phrases sentences is very interesting. And the way he leads your mind on a path. It's very interesting. And some good advice too.
Yeah, for example, the one that I remember is how to win every battle. You remember how that goes?
Don't start a battle you cannot win.
Not sure if that's it too. Like he was saying, don't commit any errors, don't screw up. Otherwise. So if you don't make any errors,
I think he says to win every battle, you've got to know your enemy 100% of the time and know yourself 100% of the time. And essentially, if that's the case, there's no need for a battle. And to me, that's why I consider that book, the actual title of that book should be How Not to Go to War, because it is really about just the, to me, it is like a limited awareness of what's possible. And as long as you're within that limit, you're not aware of like the value of peace. And even in the book, The Art of War, they essentially say you can't sustain war. It's unsustainable. And yet here we are, so, but,
Pamela says hello, by the way. She joined us.
Hello, Pamela.
She says love is a verb, and she says hugs to all, even though she did not hear Tim's question earlier about, would you hug us if you were here in physical space with us, Pamela?
I know she would.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she would.
She couldn't resist.
We're just so lovely.
No, Pam's huggy.
Pam says yes. So
She's just huggy.
we're good. Well, that's good. That's what we love about her.
You guys know what the theme song for today is?
What is the theme song for today, Dennis?
The group is called the Kingstonians.
Are you going to
Ever heard of
sing
them?
it or what?
No, I won't sing it. But the song is called
Play
We Are
it on the
Sufferers.
drum?
Big time, old time roots reggae tune. Kingstonians, We Are the Sufferers.
Your accent's coming out. Keep going. Start singing.
It's funny.
Deirdre, so what we've discussed, how does Viktor Frankl address this stuff and his idea of logotherapy? Is there anything that we haven't covered that makes it more important or something that we should have?
Sure. So it's the I guess at the basics of it all is just taking responsibility, taking ownership of yourself, taking ownership of what your contribution is. I do have some things to add. I don't know what you guys would think of it. This is from maybe his book, Man's Search for Meaning. Freedom, however, is not the last word. Freedom is only a part of the story and half of the truth. Freedom is but the negative aspect of the whole phenomenon, whose positive aspect is responsibleness. In fact, freedom is in danger of denigrating into mere arbitrariness unless it is lived in terms of responsibleness. What do you guys think of that? Role of responsibility in free society.
Well, I think a lot of people don't understand what freedom is up until they get thrown in jail or something where they're restricted from actually being free. And then they start to realize what that is. But then the opposite, like what you mentioned, the responsibility of freedom and what it entails is essential, is like really kind of looking at what infinity is, because freedom is big, but we don't really realize it until we don't have it. How, and so it is kind of a confusing topic for a lot of people, but I think it's certainly something that a lot of people are going to have to confront.
Yeah, it is quite confronting, the realization that, oh, I am responsible for everything that I do, every choice, every decision, no matter how lousy and okay, yeah, that was a lousy decision. Oh, that yeah, I could have planned that better. Okay, you're human. Cool, you acknowledge that. It's written in time. You need to now accept that that's happened and live with it, and take responsibility to do better next time. That is hard for people to confront, that looking at themselves in the mirror, because some people have done really lousy things. You still have responsibility for what's happened or what could possibly happen, like that self-ownership. Like, what do you guys think ownership means?
Mom.
Taking ownership for your stuff.
Mom.
Yeah, darling.
Well, Tim?
Self-ownership. I think responsibility is kind of taking a backseat to other things these days. And, we're responsible for our own thoughts and actions, but we're told that we deserve things, or we should have these things, or just because, or whatever the reason is. And there's that entitlement mentality, but in reality, we're responsible for our own thoughts, feelings, actions. So we can take responsibility for it. Now, others can resist that, but that doesn't mean that we can't act on our own behalf. And really, I'm seeing that a lot now. I've seen people like acting in fear, and people are afraid. They're so afraid of dying that they're afraid to live. So the difference is, are you going to be living, or you're just going to be dying slowly? I mean, take responsibility.
Take responsibility. And I have another part to add to that is responsibility is a manifestation of the ability to respond, and in the context of freedom requires rules of engagement for both, so that I know that what you're talking about and you know what I'm talking about, because we haven't been raised properly, we haven't been known how to do these things, so at least we can have some type of terms of agreement to come to a common ground. But this is also, that also makes it more meaningful, because I understand where you're coming from, you understand where I'm coming from, and then we can move forward and grow things from that. I think the funniest thing that I've ever seen so far is what kind of emulates what Tim was saying, like, doing it in spite of that fear of death. That fear of death is going to be there. It's inevitable. Everyone's going to die. You're going to die. Yeah, that's just what it is. But living in spite of that fear, it is kind of like, I can't remember, don't bag me up, guys. I watched Pirates of the Caribbean. And in there, I can't remember which one it is, maybe number 5. He was in jail, right? And he's walking past, they're dragging him past. And his mate calls out from his house. He goes, "Oh my gosh, Jackie boy, I'm so glad. How are you?" From his house. And he like leans across the cell and the guard stops. He's like, "Oh," like between two guys. "Oh, no, can't complain." He goes, "Oh, all right, you're going for a lashing. You're lucky. The service is shocking here. I've been waiting 2 hours for my lashing. It hasn't happened." And I'm just like, see, he was stuck in jail. He was waiting for a lashing. He knew he was going to get a lashing. But he's poking fun at the fact that the least second bloody well come on time for his lashing. That's, making fun of what it is. You're still you, even if it's, in where he was. I find that, to me, that emulates logotherapy really well. It's it's moving, it's growing beyond, in spite of the situation, in spite of what's going on. You're still growing.
I think of a quote that's, I'm not exactly sure if I've got it right, but it's, "I would rather live a day on my feet, standing on my feet, than living a lifetime on my knees." And to me, that's like, I think what most people accept is a lifetime of living on their knees, which to some degree is easier because you can point fingers at other people and say, well, they're responsible. But the reality is that they never get to know what standing on their own 2 feet are. And, it's hard to vote on something that you never knew, And so I think in the perspective of, the masses of people, we've got a real disconnect on understanding what living really is. And, to a large degree, yeah, living is being responsible for yourself, but it's also like taking credit for yourself when you do stuff that's awesome. It's like, it's a whole nother world.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, let's say that each one of us chose to do something that we were afraid of over the next week. And it was something that wasn't necessarily like physically dangerous, but, we could be subject to embarrassment or ridicule or disparagement or something else. But
don't we already do that every day?
It caused growth, right? We do it here, yes, but
like in Autonomy too,
I mean,
everywhere.
It's a worthwhile exercise because you're expanding your area of competence and consciousness into those areas that you're afraid of, and then you make it yours, and then you own it. So where can we go? Like, what's the next plateau, or how do we get there?
Well, have you ever watched the movie Rudy, where the
Yeah.
guy that's the short guy that he really isn't supposed to be on the football team, but finally he gets his chance and he does his thing. And the thing is it's not like responsibility isn't something that just like, okay, you do it once and boom, you get a big prize. It's something that you work at and you work at and you work at, but then that day comes when you realize all this work was worth it. And there's they can't take that from you, you know? So it's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I think so few people experience that these days.
And I think that thing that you do, Michael, the lights on, superpowers on. No, what's it called? Systems check, superpowers on. That thing. That is really cool. And I can't wait till we finish editing that so that we can share it with our listeners, because it's an amazing little tool. I actually shared it with Eric today and he really liked it. I showed it to him. I'm like, look what I'm working on. So it's a really cool thing, because treating yourself, like, I think one of the phrases that you used in the description was like, just like a pilot in the cockpit, you sit down in the cockpit of your life in the morning and you check your systems. You see if there's any negativity or any detrimental thoughts, anything that could trip you up in an hour when you start living, or step into living, in a more active way.
Yeah.
And I think that is a great concept. And I think that doing it like a game, like, okay, I'm in the cockpit of my life, I think that's actually beneficial. Imagine Tim doing that in his car every morning. Okay, I'm in the cockpit. Let's see, what switches do we need to put on? Okay, do I feel good? Yeah, I feel pretty good. Check. Any negative thoughts? Okay, there's that one. Okay, what do we do about it? Let's put it off till tonight. Check.
No, it goes kind of like this. It's like, do I have my coffee? Do I have my podcast? Okay, subconscious, take me to work.
Well, we're suggesting a more conscious way of driving to work.
Well, that could be one of his superpowers, though.
My subconscious drives and my consciousness listens to the podcast.
Nice.
Amen.
Nice. Nice. By the way, Pamela said she has that song that you were talking about.
Really? The Kingstonians?
I believe she said she has the band.
Wow.
Maybe
She's
that could be
pretty
our
sure she
outro.
has that group, if not that song, in one of her albums.
That could be our outro.
So, or Dennis can, oh no, Dennis can't go on Facebook and share songs. Then it can send me links to songs and I'll put them on Facebook. Unfortunately, Dennis had a kerfuffle with his account. In any case, moving on. We're not going to get into that masquerade. So, but Michael can share your songs for you now that you need an adult.
Mr. Zuckerberg doesn't even know what he lost. He had a loss there.
Well, In any case, I think it's 5:24. We're nearing the end. I'm not sure where Deirdre went, but she probably had a child event. And yeah, is there anything else? Let's close out. So logotherapy sounds like a really cool thing, because it takes you from, it walks you step by step from the darkness to a more desired location in your mind, right? So I think that's what's really cool about that.
Well, I feel like there's some simplicity. So, what did we go through all three steps that you were going to go through, Deidre, or did we just get to the first one?
3 steps for what? Sorry, I had to go get some medicine for my little one.
I thought we discussed like 3 basic areas that kind of led to choices. Did we get through all those, or?
Oh, no. They were just through working through the grief, unpacking the steps for logotherapy. Okay, yeah, the 3 steps. That's what you mean. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
okay,
logotherapy. Yeah, you can sum it up as the event actually happening, the disbelief of what's going on, and then the realization that nothing's going to change. And then the last step is moving beyond that, that you must keep moving forward in spite of what has happened. That's Lego therapy.
So like for me would be the first step of doing private sessions and the disbelief that people are actually going to pay for them, and then moving forward with more private sessions. Is that what it is?
That makes sense to me.
I'm
So
just
simple.
joking. People have been paying for sessions with me for a long, but it sounded good, didn't it? No, I was kind of thinking about phrasing it and rebranding, but it didn't. With the rebranding, it didn't come out as funny, so I had to say the funny thing. What can I say?
Okay,
Well,
the funny thing.
What I was going to add is, Viktor Frankl's, his story is one of, a great deal of suffering and grief and all that kind of stuff, living through, the horrors of, the concentration camps of Germany, but coming out of that with some incredible wisdom.
You know
that
what? We should
does
probably
sound
say
somewhat basic.
we should
Go ahead.
probably say Nazi concentration camps, because I don't think that the German people wanted to sound like German any more than Polish people. Like when they say Polish concentration camps, that irks me. And I wonder if German people are like, yeah, I didn't really make those concentration camps either, So they would like the specific group would be the Nazis, so Nazi concentration camps.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's
Well,
fair.
I guess there's been concentration camps all over the place, unfortunately, and
Yes,
there's probably some
that's-
in most countries these days, unfortunately.
That's
Could
true
it be
too.
from the current environment, a type of concentration camp? So from that, so that's how he came up with his. He had his philosophy for his form of therapy before he went into the concentration camp. But it was burnt. So that's why I use analogies. Like if you were stripped off naked, if you were stripped off of your nakedness, people had that, they were critically asked how important you are to society, and they'd bring out, all of their papers, their qualifications, their doctorates, where they stand in society. And, a soldier would just walk up, put it in the trash can and lit it up on fire, strip them off naked. It doesn't mean anything. What means is your ownership is your body. You're still you in spite of all of that.
What about my pieces of paper?
Yeah. In fact, I think that's something that Autonomy and Richard, I think, is actually brought up in this last lecture he had, was talking about the skills and abilities that you have are really the things that are your assets, and all
Sometimes
the
the
rest of it
piece
is
of
just
paper doesn't bring you any useful skills whatsoever. People leave these institutions with a piece of paper and a complete inability to survive in the real world. It's
But
quite
Makes it even worse, right? Because they have to pay back a bunch of money for the rest of their lives.
right, and then they're indentured to the institution or to the institution that provided the funding for the
We
rest of
can
their
obey.
lives.
We know how to obey when we leave.
Yes, we obey.
So what's the difference then in responsibility? Let's say we all are responsible here. How do we do it? How do we work together? We don't obey some type of leader in our team.
I thought we all do what Agnieszka is telling us to do.
If that was the case, you guys would actually do what I tell you to do.
She's about to tell you to shut up and be nice, Dennis.
If I really wanted him to shut up, I'd press the mute button. I have it.
But she's
Have it right here.
Emma.
See, there you go. Boom, Dennis can't speak. Never mind. I had muted you.
Did you see that?
I only
knew it.
muted him for a second.
Your 5
It'll
minutes
be
is up.
fine.
No
And
more
that's basically
talking
how
to
you make $1 million in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody
All right, you guys. let's play the outro, and we'll be back on Wednesday with more riveting content and hopefully some funny jokes too. People say I should go into comedy, so who knows?
What is the title for Wednesday's show?
Yeah, next show.
What are we going to cover?
The title is, hang on, I'll tell you in just a second. When Loss Has Unexpected Benefits. Tune in on Wednesday at 7 p.m.
It's going to be a powerful one.
7:05, maybe 7:08 p.m. Eastern. Yes. It should be fun, yes. Anyway, so I will bid you adieu until Wednesday, and bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.